Hi everybody, welcome back to AP Psychology with me, Miss Baines, your teacher, where you can take advantage of being able to pause and rewind me as I deliver you our latest content. Go ahead and grab those markers, get yourself nice and comfy, and of course, don't forget those very important binder notes that go in lockstep order with this video called Unit 7, Video 2, Hunger, which can be found on page 5 of your binder notes. I'll see you on the other side. We're going to be talking about hunger, and it seems very obvious, right? Like, well, I am hungry, so I better go eat. But there are some cognitive and physical factors that we need to talk about more specifically in this unit, starting with that exact question: what triggers hunger? Of course, physically, we're going to talk about stomach contractions, like when your stomach growls, and the hormones in our body chemistry and how it kind of works to make us be motivated to eat or driven to eat, as well as the part of our brain that is involved, which is called, once again, the hypothalamus. So you have to make sure you have thorough notes taken of all three of these things. Okay, so first up is the physiology of hunger. Our external incentives to eat because we are triggered by the presence of food, especially tasty, high fat, high calorie, and delicious, greasy food. Okay? The physiology of hunger are called stomach contractions, and the growling that's going on sends signals to the brain, making us aware of our hunger, right? So this one is kind of simple. What's involved here is some other stuff with our body chemistry, okay? Our blood chemistry of glucose. So your body is normally pretty good at maintaining its blood glucose levels, except for people who are diabetic, right? That's kind of what's going on with them. The hormone insulin decreases glucose in the blood, which is its job, lowering blood glucose levels, making us feel hungry, okay? So when we release insulin from our pancreas into our bloodstream, it is already breaking down the glucose that is already in there from the food that we have eaten. If we are not, right, if we do not continually supply the food, our glucose, and our blood, then we are going to feel hungry again. And that's when you get all lightheaded and stuff, right? You can't really focus, you're kind of weak and a little bit shaky. That's because you have low blood sugar levels. We do not consciously notice these glucose and brain changes within the glucose, but instead the levels of glucose in our blood are monitored by the receptors or our neurons inside of our gut, inside of our stomach. The neurons that are inside of the stomach, the liver, and our intestines send signals to the brain, specifically the hypothalamus, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about now. The hypothalamic centers, there are lateral and ventromedial. You're going to need to know the difference between the two of these, but you also need to know what happens if there is any damage to either one of them, okay? So, first, knowing what they do. You've got to just think, okay, what would happen if the lateral hypothalamus was damaged? So the lateral hypothalamus brings on hunger, okay? It makes you feel the feeling of being hungry. So if we destroyed that, right, in any mammal or animal, it would starve the animal because this animal would not have the drive to want to go and eat, right? You need something to tell you that you're hungry in order to act on that drive, in order to fulfill it or satisfy it. So if we destroy it, the animal would starve to death, pretty much. What you would write on the FRQ is that the lateral hypothalamus stimulates hunger in an organism, right? We, people, are organisms. So again, if it were destroyed, the animal or the organism would not know when they were hungry and therefore would starve to death. It would never want to eat. Ventromedial hypothalamus depresses hunger stimulation, okay? So it stops you from eating. It tells your body, you've eaten enough, back away from the plate. You're good. You don't want to eat too much so that you make yourself vomit. Ventromedial hypothalamus, the way I want you to remember this one is V for ventromedial, V for vomit. It's going to make you vomit if you eat too much, right? V in vomit, V in ventromedial. That's kind of the idea, okay? Again, you're not going to write that in an FRQ, but you're going to use that to help you to remember that it suppresses the hunger stimulation. It makes you feel satiated, and therefore you don't need to eat anymore. If that is broken or destroyed in your body, an animal, not knowing what's going on with them, could eat excessively to the point where they could literally blow up their stomach by eating too much. Hopefully that is something you can understand, how important these two guys are in making sure that we don't overeat or that we don't undereat, right? It turns it on and it turns it off, right? You don't want to do either one of these things. Okay, set point theory is the third term. Set point theory is a theory about at what point our weight should be. Kind of like homeostasis. Manipulating the lateral and ventromedial hypothalamus alters our body's weight thermostat, predisposing us to keeping our bodies at a steady weight. So if our weight is lost, we go below our set point. We could go below our set point, right? If food intake increases, but our energy expenditures decrease. If we are gaining weight, if we go above our set point, the opposite takes place. What this is saying is that everyone has their own ideal set point, and it's different, and it is based off of different metabolism levels. And the hypothalamus and all other kinds of things that are going on inside our bodies are helping you to know what that set point is from one person to another person, right? It's not just based on one thing. Comparing one person to another's is like comparing apples to apples. It's just not necessarily the case, right? It's not based on size. So to maintain set point, the body not only adjusts food intake and energy output, it also adjusts its basal metabolic rate. This is the body's resting rate of energy expenditure. And when you are sitting on the couch, binge watching television or some series, your rate of energy expenditure drops. When there's less activity occurring and you're not moving your body around, your metabolic rate drops down. When you are not active, it's going to fall down lower. Not all researchers believe in the idea of a set point because they believe that slow, sustained changes in body weight and can change their set point at any given time. Depending on their activity levels, you can change your set point, which is kind of an interesting theory, but also kind of reassuring that we can control that, right? So as long as we're remaining active and living a healthy lifestyle, everything's going to be fine. So the psychology of hunger, there's quite a few things going on here psychologically with the external incentives, right? This is that we eat just because we're triggered by the presence of food around us, especially tasty, high-fat, or high-caloric foods. So this is like you're at a party. You're not really even hungry, but you just can't step away from the snack table because there's just so many yummy things sitting right in front of you, right? Let me just have a little bit more of this dip, okay? Some other external things are eating by the clock. We eat because it's time for lunch or time for dinner. The second is social eating, right? Eating at an event because you are expected to. The hostess spent all night making you this delicious hors d'oeuvres being passed around by waiters. They're cheesy and gooey and delicious. Or the third is, we'll usually, again, eat high calorie or comfort foods during times of stress or depression. Right? We eat more or less when we're not feeling good about ourselves or we're going through different types of trauma. And we'll use for holidays or if we're out watching a movie or staying home watching a movie and we have a big giant tub of buttered popcorn with lots of salt and lots of M&Ms melting inside of them. Okay? And whatever your treats are, whatever it is that you love to eat, when you're stressed out and you sit back and watch a movie to relax, there's almost always food that goes along with it. I see you. Another example would be a dinner party, right? And you're here at this wonderful cocktail hour and the hostess has made this incredible dinner and these hors d'oeuvres are being brought around on trays by hired waiters, and you are just looking at all this cheesy, gooey, yummy fried foods and you can't stop yourself, and you start eating all of the food off the trays, and by the time you sit down for dinner you're not hungry anymore. Holidays are famous for this, watching TV or football games or movies, and you can't eat the whole box of cookies just because it's Christmas or the holidays, right? You're supposed to eat a lot around Christmas time or whatever holiday you celebrate. The next one is taste preference. Is it biological that we like our foods, or is it cultural? Are we born genetically to eat our Indian food if we're Indian, or Chinese food if we're Asian? I look at this picture and I think it's absolutely disgusting, but this is a street market of many different places, including in the United States, but across the world. Body chemistry, environmental factors together influence not only what we feel hungry for, but when we feel hungry, but also what we feel hungry for. And it's kind of like an ugly cycle. If you live in a place like America, where we're surrounded by high calorie, high sugar, high fat, floured foods, you're going to get a craving for carbohydrates. Something like, I don't know, a really yummy coffee drink with lots of caffeine and sugar and whipped cream and syrup, or a McDonald's Happy Meal or something, or a Wendy's $6 biggie bag, Chipotle, any of these things, because they are so salty and tasty and yummy. Or maybe culturally, everybody in your family spends their weekends around sports, and after the sports game you all go and get ice cream or lunch, and you get like hamburgers or grilled cheeses, right? So when we have these cultural experiences that end up happening because of the foods that we eat, we end up needing to be super careful about the calories that we're taking in just because we're having a good time. The last thing we're going to talk about are eating disorders. Anorexia nervosa, you might think, I know these. If you need to write about them for an FRQ, you have to know how they are characterized. Anorexia is characterized by a normal weight person, right? Normally this an adolescent woman, so around, high school or slightly older, losing dramatic amounts of weight continuously and still feeling that they are overweight. Very negative, depressed mental state of being. And because no matter what they do, when they look in the mirror, they feel that they are overweight. So anorexia nervosa is self-starvation with a dramatic weight loss below 85% normal. Some scary causes would be a combination of factors. There are some genetic predispositions here to become anorexic. There are some biochemical imbalances and some social influences. And then there are the psychological characteristics like self-punishing behavior, or having a perfectionist personality type, or culturally we are pressured to be the best at school. And these cultural reinforcements of ideas of attractiveness and how you feel like you can't be thin enough, they can be very scary, ugly factors contributing to this. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is bulimia. Bulimia nervosa is a disorder characterized by episodes of binge eating, okay? So binge eating high calorie foods, usually unhealthy foods, followed by purging. That purging can come in the form of vomiting, the use of laxatives, the use of fasting, or the use of excessive exercising. Okay, so these people tend to binge and eat tons of food, and then they want it out of their body again. So they'll start running or doing high calorie burning types of exercises, and they will probably get it out of their body. So they binge eat the food, then they feel guilty, so they purge it, which reduces the anxiety that they're feeling about the guilt, but then they go through that cycle all over again. right? And then so they binge again, and the cycle continues. It may occur as often as twice or even 3 times a day. Rather than being extremely underweight, most bulimics are average weight or slightly overweight, okay? The causes include low self-esteem, stress, cultural ideas of attractiveness, depression, and possible biological mechanisms of dealing with, say, the hypothalamus, right? That they aren't feeling satisfied enough. And they just defined binge eating as reoccurrent binge eating without any type of purging, as in bulimia. This being a disorder itself. Body image is next. Let's talk about body image, particularly with women in Western cultures who tend to overemphasize thin body images more than other cultures. Other cultures put more emphasis on appearance, have a higher rate of eating disorders, like in America. Women who have low self-esteem are particularly likely to have a negative body image and are especially vulnerable to eating disorders because it produces a sense of control in and over their lives. We are starting to see high incidences of people with eating disorders, especially certain athletes, but it's still predominantly in women. So, just a quick summary of hunger. There's biopsychosocial factors, right? Or notes kind of being encompassed in these 3 areas that go along with hunger. You could say that with eating disorders, all 3 of these things have an impact. Okay? That's all I've got for you today. Have a great night. Bye now.